The campaign to free the Al Jazeera journalist detained in Egypt has become a social media phenomenon. The family of Mohammed Fahmy, one of the detainees, tweeted on his account, and the mounting foreign pressure has reportedly led to better conditions for the journalists, while British Foreign Secretary William Hague today publicly expressed his concern at the condition of journalists in Egypt. Our monitor ran the article "Journalists in Egypt Become the Story," which mentions Peter Grest, Mohammed Fahmy and Bahir Mohammed, saying they are among 20 journalists referred to trial on charges of aiding or joining a terrorist group and threatening national security. Our monitor says following a social media campaign, news feeds of journalists in Egypt are filled with as many tweets and posts about the detained peers as other breaking news. The attention is working. A 22-minute video, purportedly showing the arrest, backfired, with the media ridiculing the format. The footage was taken in the Marriott hotel room in Cairo, where Al Jazeera English was operating, which has been called by authorities and echoed in local media as a terrorist cell. The Qatari-owned Al Jazeera English and its Arabic-language Mubashir Masr channel are widely denounced in Egypt as mouthpieces for the Muslim Brotherhood, which has been labelled by the government that ousted President Morsi as a terrorist organisation. Egyptian-British journalist Sarah Carr commented that the Al Jazeera arrest video tarnished Egypt's image more than any Mason spy terrorist foreign journalist could ever hope to do. Organisers of the Twitter campaign Free AJ Staff protested outside the Egyptian embassy there this week, drawing dozens of news cameras and pushing international coverage. White House officials said this week they have asked Egypt to release the journalists. The article says, but while an improvement in their prison conditions is promising, journalists here continue to work under the threat of a continuing government crackdown that remains unclear in scope and legality, sometimes aided by the public. Despite the improvement in conditions for the journalists in prison, intense crowds on the third anniversary of the January 25th revolution, journalists accused of reporting for Al Jazeera were beaten or forced to flee attack. A number of journalists were arrested that day, and reports of new arrests continue. For many journalists working in Egypt, the threat is constant. In addition to the threat of attack, injury, death or arrest while reporting amid clashes or intense crowds, a few journalists here are even expressing worry at the sound of their doorbell ringing after several foreign and Egyptian journalists were arrested from their homes in recent weeks, some remaining in detention. Today we're joined by blogger and journalist Nirvana Mahmood, who writes on Middle East affairs for a number of prominent publications. Nirvana, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
So, journalist Sarah Carr tweeted a while ago that the arrest video of the Al Jazeera journalist has tarnished Egypt's image abroad more than any foreign journalist could. During the Mubarak era, slandering Egypt's reputation was seen as a serious crime. Have the authorities in Egypt essentially shot themselves in the foot with these actions?
Well, there is no doubt there is a current political agitation in Egypt, and a lot of Egyptians feel that the coverage of some foreign media outlet was not fair. However, they wrongly translate that into accusing journalists of bias, and this is not true. Al Jazeera English is not most of its report is mostly balanced in comparison to Al Jazeera Arabic. That's why the Egyptian government should understand that the climate which was before during Mubarak cannot be repeated now. The country had a revolution, for God's sake, and there is opening of different reports, different views, and the government should understand that, allowing journalists to cover fairly and in a free environment is just part of the bargain. If they are concerned about certain allegations, they could do investigation and without putting journalists in prison. So if they bothered in the beginning to just issue a travel ban and release the journalist on bail, probably this campaign will not attract this worldwide attention. However, they acted really in a regressive manner. They even put them in a solitary confinement for quite some time in a very bad, atrocious condition. That was outrageous, absolutely outrageous.
And you've worked in Egypt as a journalist. What is the environment and the atmosphere like there now? Is it any different at all than it was 3 or 4 years ago?
Well, I don't think it is the same as 4 years ago, because now there is a lot of political unrest in comparison to the Mubarak era. You have to remember, before the January 25 revolution, protest in the streets and defiance of the police was nearly unheard of. Only maximum was 10 and 15 people in the streets. Now there is a protest daily, and sometimes and weekly Friday become a routine. So the environment is become more tense and more agitated. Nonetheless, now things have changed, and the government is trying to crack down more and arrest more and more people and accusing more and more journalists. So, in fact, you can say it is worse than Mubarak time.
And we just covered a Monitor article which said that public complicity was a factor in imprisoning journalists, that the public were actively seeking to report on journalists. Do you think that's true?
I heard reports of it. Obviously, I have no evidence, but I heard even one case, a mother have reported her own son. That's for allegedly being part of a terrorist organization, in between inverted commas. So that's the kind of environment now. People feel that they are losing, the fear of losing a functioning state have pushed a lot of people to do, unfortunately, illogical stuff such as like this. I'm not aware of any journalists have been reported that way, but that can be easily the case anytime.
And the military and the police have been the institutions in Egypt for the last 50, 60 years. Do you think basically that it will remain that way for the foreseeable future? Yes and no. At Mubarak time, the police had more dominant role than the military, and I think now the military, if Marshal Sisi have decided definitely to run as a president, then the military will become more on the limelight, more than during Mubarak time. Remember, during Mubarak time, the military had a prominent role in the state, but was not actually running the state. Mubarak had more leeways and maneuvering skills. Now, the Sisi running for election can change all this. And I think the army is not that keen to do that job, because they know governing the country is not what they trained for. And perhaps it explains why the delay in announcement properly or formally Sisi running for election. Thank you very much, Nirvana, for those insightful views on Egypt.
Thank you. Bye.
For more updates, please visit levant.tv. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.